Do we have any questions, Cal?
So I'm looking for them. If people want to submit super chat questions into the live chat, let's see. Someone had asked a question earlier. I don't know to what extent you two feel like you can answer this, but I'll just throw it at you. Kimberly had asked, any news on 2 in jail for burning car dash in NYC? So I guess maybe the more kind of generous or generative version of that question is just kind of thoughts on how the protests have been evolving here in New York, where Michael and I are. There's an Occupy City Hall protest occurring at the moment. There's still protests across the country, although it's certainly not what it was several weeks ago. So I guess maybe if you guys have any new thoughts on kind of how the protests have been developing over the last few weeks. And if you know anything about Kimberly's specific question.
What was the question again? I didn't catch that.
News on 2 in jail for burning car dash in NYC.
Oh, okay. So this is actually really quick. This is actually a really important story. And I interviewed Murtaza Hussain about this on the Majority Report on Thursday. And unfortunately, I forget the name of the 2 lawyers, which is bad. We should all remember their names. So basically, these 2 attorneys who are young, like they're both in their early 30s. They were at the protest. They got caught on camera, and it's totally clear. I mean, this is just, whatever you think of it, this is just absolutely symbolic. They're not trying to hurt anybody. They went by a police car that had already been like destroyed. There was no people nearby, and they threw some type of homemade Molotov cocktail in it, and it scorched the dashboard a bit. Again, this is like, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I remember, like, this is an extremely stupid example. I remember, like, being in high school, like, we were like, there was some big party in the woods, and there was a car that was already pretty beat up, and some guy started, like, stomping on the roof of the car, and it was dumb, but the car was, it was his car, and it was already effed up. So, like, this is more analogous to that, right? Now, they basically, first of all, they could go to jail for 45 years. The Trump administration is trying to make, like, a serious example of them in a way that clearly is designed to terrify anybody from protesting. And the other thing is that the media went and immediately embraced this, like, really mocking narrative. And by the way, like, look, if these guys, like, got caught and, it was like, oh, you're going to do 5 hours of community service or whatever, like, I might have a little bit of a chuckle too, like, sure. But the truth of the matter is that they were completely dehumanized, not just in the New York tabloids, which is wrong, but you'd expect, but the New York Times and CNN, basically just saying, like, what's wrong with them? Like, they're lawyers. They're just trying to make them look like idiot, vicarious thrill seekers. And, like, the truth of the matter is that these are both, like, the young man, his family's from Jamaica. He grew up in East New York. He worked his way, I think, through NYU in law school, has a really good job. And, one of the things that people have pointed out is that part of the reason people were more aggressive at protests is a lot of people feel they have less to lose. Well, these 2 people, she was also a public interest lawyer in the Bronx, and her family had immigrated from Pakistan. Like, they had a lot to lose. They had real, they had good jobs, and they were out, obviously in the main completely correct, like, out protesting for this very righteous cause. There was also an interview with her that the full context was her kind of basically making the point that property damage is treated as more serious than harming people, like the murder of George Floyd. The New York Daily News cut it to make it look like she was threatening violence towards cops, which was not what she was doing. So this is, like, a really, really dangerous case. And they are, right, the last I heard of it, I mean, they weren't even getting bail. So I would say people should read Murtaza's piece in The Intercept, and we should really stay on top of that case, because it's really awful, and they definitely need our support. And it's a Justice Department and New York, like, prosecutorial attempt to stop people from going to protest, period. I have no doubt. And it was also this, like, cheap media narrative, where instead of like looking at the stakes and the consequences and filling out the picture, it was just like, oh, look at these idiots. Well, you know, they go to their and even if they don't go for 45 years, like the design, it's to suppress protests and to get them to plead, you know, like 5 years doesn't feel like so much if it's not 45 years. It's a lot, and it's enormously damaging, and it's all completely unjust. So we should support them strongly. I think real quick, you know, the protests are ongoing. That's cool. I think one of the things that, you know, people should think about is definitely like, what is the next phase, and not getting addicted to particular types of tactics.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, you know, I'm starting to see a shift from, you know, the actual effective activism that takes place on the streets to the Twitter war cancel culture component of it, which isn't as important, or even it's not nearly as important. I think that the most important thing is to shift the focus squarely on protecting people from brutal force, and also ensuring that we solve the inherent problems that we have in this country that lead to crimes of desperation, really. So the inequality, the economic system, all of this stuff is intertwined. And we honestly can't get distracted by some of the nonsense that we're seeing on Twitter right now.
Oh God, it's totally antithetical, and please, I mean, this is exactly how, you know, serious things get diverted to stupid and gross and disgusting and counterproductive things.